Why did a respected imam from Cairo completely abandon the practice of ruqya? What did he see in an abandoned mosque on the outskirts of the city that made him tremble for weeks? And why, to this day, does he refuse to sleep without reciting Ayat al-Kursi 3 times? My brothers and sisters, what you will hear today is not fiction. It's not an urban legend. These are the exact words of Ahmad al-Misri, a man who dedicated 15 years of his life studying the invisible world of jinns. A man who saw things that most of us should never see. This is his confession, word for word, just as he told me on a winter afternoon in Cairo, with trembling hands and eyes fixed on infinity. Listen until the end, because what happened in the 3rd ruqya session will rob you of sleep for days. But before we begin, tell me in the comments where you're listening to this story from. I want to know what countries this message is reaching. Also check if you're subscribed to the channel, because today you'll hear something that will forever change your perspective on the invisible world. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. May Allah protect us from what you're about to hear. Ahmad al-Misri was not an ordinary man. Born in the popular neighborhoods of Cairo, son of a carpenter and an elementary school teacher, he memorized the entire Quran by age 12. By 25, he was already known throughout Egypt as one of the most promising young scholars at Al-Azhar University. But Ahmad had a special gift. Since childhood, he could sense things that others couldn't. When he entered a house, he immediately knew if something was wrong. When someone was possessed by a jinn, he sensed it before the person even began to speak. That's how, at 30, Ahmad became one of the most sought-after RAQIs in Cairo. Not by his own choice, but because people simply began seeking him out. Desperate families knocked on his door in the middle of the night, crying mothers, fathers in despair, children they no longer recognized, and Ahmad never said no until the day he should have. He told me that in the early years everything seemed controlled. They were simple cases, evil eye, envy, small possessions that were resolved with a few sessions of Quran and dhikr. Ahmad would return home tired, but relieved. He felt he was fulfilling his mission, but there was something he didn't know, something that none of the Al-Azhar books taught. The more you dive into the world of jinns, the more they dive into yours. It was on a Friday in December 2018 that everything changed. Ahmad had just finished the Maghrib prayer when his phone rang. On the other end of the line, a desperate voice, "Brother Ahmad, please come urgently. It's my son Yusuf. Something terrible is happening." The woman's name was Fatima. She and her husband were converts to Islam for only 3 months. Their son Yusuf, 22 years old, had converted with them, an entire family that had embraced the Islamic faith after years of studying different religions. Ahmad arrived at the apartment in the Zamalek neighborhood around 8 at night. It was a modern, well-maintained building, nothing to indicate the hell that was happening on the 3rd floor. When Fatima opened the door, Ahmad saw terror stamped in her eyes. She led him through the corridor in silence, pointing to the room at the back, and that's when Ahmad heard it. They weren't screams, they weren't moans. It was something Ahmad described as the sound of a wounded animal trying to speak Arabic, hoarse, guttural, interspersed with words in perfect classical Arabic and others in languages he had never heard. Ahmad entered the room and saw Yusuf. The young man was tied to the bed, not out of cruelty, but for safety. His body contorted impossibly, as if his bones were made of rubber. His eyes were completely white, you could only see the white part of his eyes, and the voice coming from Yusuf's mouth was not human. Ahmad began, as always, reciting Al-Fatiha and Ayat al-Kursi, but something was different this time. When he began to recite, Yusuf's body didn't just contort, he literally began to levitate a few centimeters from the bed. This is impossible, Ahmad thought. In 15 years doing ruqya, he had never seen anything like it, but the worst was yet to come. When Ahmad recited the verse, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا, Yusuf responded by completing the entire verse, in perfect Arabic, with exact pronunciation. Ahmad stopped reciting and looked at Yusuf's parents. "Does your son know the Quran?" he asked. "Brother Ahmad," the father replied with a broken voice, "my son converted 3 months ago. He can barely pronounce Allahu Akbar correctly." That's when Ahmad realized he wasn't dealing with a common case of possession. The jinn inside Yusuf didn't just know the Quran, he knew it better than many imams. During the following 40 minutes, things happened that Ahmad swore never to tell anyone, until he sought me out 5 years later, with trembling hands and an urgent need to share the burden. The jinn began speaking directly to Ahmad, and what he said about Ahmad's own past. Things that only Allah should know made the RAQI's blood freeze in his veins. But the true revelation was yet to come. Ahmad ibn Muhammad al-Misri, said the voice through Yusuf, born on the 15th of Rabi al-Awwal, son of Mahmud, the carpenter, and Aisha, the teacher, the one who lost his younger brother in a car accident at 17 and never forgave himself for it. Ahmad was shocked. None of this information was in public records. His brother's death was something he had never told anyone, not even his own wife. Surprised, Ya Ahmad. I have been on this earth for 800 years. I've seen empires rise and fall. I've seen crusades, conquests, the construction and destruction of Cairo dozens of times. Do you think a 40-year-old boy will impress me with his memorized prayers? Ahmad tried to continue the recitation, but the jinn interrupted him. Stop pretending you have control over the situation. Do you want to know why I chose this convert? Because new souls in faith are like houses without locks. Easy to enter, hard to leave. And you know what, Ahmad al-Misri? You're not the first RAQI I've encountered. The last one who tried to expel me? Well, he never slept peacefully again. Want to know where he is now? At that moment, Ahmad felt a chill run down his spine. He knew the story of Imam Rashid, a famous RAQI who had mysteriously abandoned the practice 5 years earlier and moved to a remote village in Upper Egypt. The jinn continued. Rashid is in a small cabin 200 kilometers from here, looking over his shoulder every day, praying obsessively, afraid to sleep, because every time he closes his eyes, I'm there. Ahmad understood at that moment that he wasn't just conducting a ruqya session. He was entering a spiritual war much bigger than he imagined. What happened next was something Ahmad never expected to hear in a ruqya session. The jinn made a proposal. Ahmad, said the voice, now calmer, almost seductive, you are an intelligent man, different from the other ignorant RAQIs I've encountered. That's why I'm going to make you a unique offer. Ahmad continued reciting, but the jinn proceeded. I leave this young man in peace. I leave his body right now. Never return. But in exchange, you stop doing ruqya forever. Abandon this practice and dedicate yourself only to your academic studies. Think carefully, Ahmad. You save Yusuf, save his family from destruction, and in exchange you simply stop meddling where you shouldn't. How many families have you already helped? 50, 100. You've already fulfilled your quota of good deeds. Ahmad stopped reciting for a moment. The proposal was tempting, but something was wrong. Why would a jinn make this kind of bargain? That's when Ahmad realized the truth. The jinn wasn't just possessing Yusuf. He was testing Ahmad himself, trying to make him abandon his mission through an agreement that seemed beneficial. My brother jinn, said Ahmad with a firm voice, I don't make deals with creatures of darkness. My protection comes from Allah, and it is in Allah that I trust. The reaction was immediate and terrifying. Yusuf began screaming with a voice that Ahmad described as 10 voices speaking at the same time. The room's windows opened by themselves. An icy wind took over the environment, and all the metal objects in the room began to vibrate. So you chose the hard way, Ahmad al-Misri, roared the jinn. Very well, but remember, this is not our last conversation. What followed was the most intense spiritual battle of Ahmad's life. For 3 consecutive hours, he recited the Quran without stopping. Complete Surah al-Baqarah, al-Imran, Ayat al-Kursi repeated dozens of times, al-Mu'awwidhatayn without cease. The jinn wouldn't yield. With each verse, he responded with blasphemies, threats, attempts to break Ahmad's concentration. At one point, Yusuf began speaking in ancient languages, Aramaic, Latin, dialects that no longer existed. Around midnight, Ahmad felt his strength draining. His voice was hoarse, his hands were trembling, his mind began to waver. That's when the jinn sensed the weakness and attacked. Tired, Ahmad. Your voice is failing, your knees are trembling. How long will you endure? How long will you sacrifice your own sanity for people you don't even know well? Ahmad felt doubt beginning to take over his mind. Maybe the jinn was right. Maybe it was time to stop. But it was exactly in this moment of weakness that Ahmad remembered the words of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Whoever recites Ayat al-Kursi after each obligatory prayer, nothing will prevent him from entering paradise except death. With his last strength, Ahmad began to recite Ayat al-Kursi once more. But this time it was different. He wasn't just reciting, he was living each word, feeling each meaning, surrendering himself completely to Allah's protection. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyu al-qayyum. At the word al-qayyum, Yusuf gave a final scream and fainted. Silence took over the room. The wind stopped. The objects stopped vibrating. The jinn had departed. Yusuf woke up 2 hours later, completely normal. He didn't remember anything that had happened in the past weeks. His parents cried with relief. Ahmad gave his usual guidance. Keep up with prayers, recite protection adhkars, never neglect dhikr. But for Ahmad, that night changed everything. In the days that followed, Ahmad began to notice changes in himself. He was more tired than usual. He had constant nightmares. And mainly, he began to sense presences he hadn't sensed before. It was as if that spiritual battle had opened a door inside me, he explained to me. A door I didn't know how to close. 3 weeks after Yusuf's case, Ahmad made the most difficult decision of his life, to stop doing ruqya. It wasn't fear, he made sure to clarify. It was wisdom. I realized I was dealing with forces that required a level of spiritual preparation I didn't yet possess, and that continuing would be irresponsible both to myself and to the people seeking my help. Ahmad returned to his academic studies at Al-Azhar, focusing on fiqh and tafsir, but he was never the same again. To this day, 5 years later, he maintains a rigorous routine of adhkars. He never sleeps without reciting Ayat al-Kursi 3 times. He never enters a house without reciting protection du'as. Some doors once opened never completely close, he told me. The difference is that now I know how to protect myself. During our conversation, Ahmad made sure to share the most important lessons he learned from his experience. First lesson, jinns are real and dangerous. My brothers, the world of jinns is not fiction, it's not folklore. It's a spiritual reality as concrete as gravity or the air we breathe, and just as you wouldn't play with fire or poison, you should never play with the invisible world. Second lesson, new converts are more vulnerable. Converts to Islam are like spiritual babies. They haven't yet built the spiritual defenses that come with years of religious practice. It's our responsibility as an ummah to protect them and teach them protection prayers. Third lesson, the importance of adhkars. Adhkars are not superstition. They are spiritual technology revealed by Allah for our protection. Those who neglect protection prayers are walking unarmed in a battlefield. Fourth lesson, never underestimate the enemy. The biggest mistake I made was thinking my experience and knowledge were sufficient. Jinns have existed for millennia. They know human nature better than we know ourselves. Humility and total dependence on Allah are essential. Fifth lesson, not everyone is prepared for this type of work. Ruqya is not for amateurs. It requires spiritual, physical, and mental preparation that few possess. It's better to recognize your limitations than to cause more damage trying to help. Ahmad ended our conversation with a warning he considers crucial for today's Muslims. We live in an era where the supernatural has become entertainment. Horror movies, Ouija boards, seances, games with spirit invocation. People don't realize they're literally opening portals to the world of jinns. I've received dozens of cases of young Muslims who participated in games with Charlie, moving cups, apps that supposedly communicate with the dead. They think it's harmless, but they're inviting entities into their lives. Islamic protection is not optional, it's mandatory. Those who leave home without reciting protection dua, who sleep without Ayat al-Kursi, who eat without Bismillah, are unnecessarily exposing themselves. If you take only one thing from this story, let it be this. Respect the invisible world, protect yourselves with the weapons Allah has given us, and never ever play with forces you don't understand. This was the story of Ahmad al-Misri, just as he told me on a cold afternoon in Cairo. A man who dedicated part of his life to helping others, paid the price of knowledge, and now lives with the wisdom of one who has seen beyond the veil. My brothers and sisters, the message is clear. The world of jinns is real. Our protection lies in the Quran, in the Sunnah, in the adhkars that the Prophet, peace be upon him, taught us. Do not neglect these spiritual weapons. Recite Ayat al-Kursi every night. Stay in a state of purity whenever possible. Never enter a house without saying Bismillah. Never leave without protection to us. And never, under any circumstances, play with Ouija boards, seances, or any form of communication with the invisible world. If this story made you reflect, if it made you understand the reality of the invisible world, share this video with your brothers and sisters. Someone you know might need this warning. Someone might be playing with forces they don't understand. But do you think this is the only terrible story about the world of jinns? Unfortunately, it's not. There's another account that reached me, even more disturbing than Ahmad al-Misri's. This next story is even more shocking because it shows how jinns can take revenge when their territory is invaded. Click on the video appearing on the screen now to discover why some houses should never be inhabited and how a Muslim family had to fight for their very souls.